The 14th year of Chenghua. Chapter 69. Repay each other for a lifetime. Tang Fan smiled lightly, then found a chair beside the bed to sit down on. With the red swelling on his face having since faded away, this action of his was naturally smooth and elegant. "What do you think about it?" he countered without answering, wanting to know what was in his friend's mind. Suizhou was strong in martial arts and sturdy in body, so even with his serious injury, he was pretty much fine after these many days of rest. Now, sitting propped up against the wall to have a chat with his friend was just another type of rest. Hearing this, he began to ponder the question. "Many already see you as one of Zhongying's people, but from how I've seen, Wanan has long had the idea to replace him. He's definitely not going to sit in the minister position for long. If he leaves, you'll be facing Liang Wenhua alone. The court is currently divided up into different factions who were fiercely fighting between themselves. Liang Wenhua is close to head cabinet Wanan, but Lu Su and Lu Ji don't like him much. You still have a chance." This trip had taken a month. At this time, Suizhou hadn't yet heard the news that Zhongying had since been sent to Nanjing, nor did he know how very predictably on point his own words were. "You mean to say that I should rely on help from those two?" Suizhou nodded. "Lu Su is coarse and blunt while Lu Ji is sly, and neither are easy to cooperate with. Lu Su, at least, is the teacher of the current emperor. His Majesty even calls him Mr. Lu of the East, meaning he clearly respects him. He's also still appreciative of capable young officials. If you can get his protection, you won't need to be afraid of Liang Wenhua." In the cabinet, Lu Su was lazy and negligent in his duties, but compared to the others, he was decent in character and would often admonish the emperor to make him have diligence and be nice to his people. However, he had a poor temper and loved to scold people. If he found someone displeasing to the eye, regardless of good and evil, he would stand on manufactured moral high ground to chide them. That trait of his incited dislike and the reason why his popularity in the court was awful. It was only because of those that meddled in laying things out that he ended up getting placed side by side with Wanan and Lu Ji. When outsiders first heard the terms clay figurine cabinet and 6 clay figurine ministers, all they would think was that every level of this court had the general practice of muddling around in wait for death and was practically incurable of it, but in truth, there were differences between each clay figurine figures. Tang Fan's immediate superior Zhongying had similarly been inadvertently grouped amongst the clay figurine ministers, yet still had something of a conscience, and his principles still had a bottom line. He couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the Minister of Works, Lu Zhao. And Lu Su, compared to the head cabinet that was exceedingly adept in flattering consort Wan and the emperor, could practically be called a whiff of clarity in the muddy currents, in terms of moral character. However, upon hearing this, Tang Fan just smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Your way would be good, but it won't work for me." Suizhou raised his brows. "Why not?" "He and my teacher have a grudge. They hate to see each other's faces and will happily tear each other apart as soon as they meet each other. Do you think that with Lu Su's personality, he would ever protect the disciple of his enemy? It's that deep of a hatred. That goes without saying, but you know as well as I that neither of them have a good temper, and both think themselves smart. In war, there is no second place, but in wars of words, there is no first place. I don't quite know what their conflict arose from, but basically, I once witnessed my mentor splash Lu Su with a cup of tea, saying that it was so unbelievably filthy, it was unpalatable." Great. With all that nonsense done, there was no need to even think about ever having a day where the two could shake hands and talk nicely. As Qiujun's student, if Tang Fan paid a visit to Lu Su, one could only imagine what sorts of humiliation he would suffer with that man's personality. That path genuinely wasn't going to work. Thinking of all that, Suizhou, too, was a little helpless. He presently wielded the rank of the commander of the Northern Administrative Court Division. Although the official's cap on his head was still for that of a 5th rank Qinhu, that rank had a very different metal weight from a civil official's 5th rank. Said civil officials would have to make a detour whenever they saw him, and even figures like the cabinet members had to stop and pay respects to him if they saw him. Further still, he had his connection to Empress Dowager Zhou, and the emperor had close confidence in him, making it not a difficult thing for him to continue his journey upwards. Even so, there was not a single tactic the mighty commander Sui Chenghua could bring out when it came to the issue of his friend's career path. On the surface, this seemed to be caused by the Chenghua and civil officials having two standalone systems for promotions, but Sui Zhou still felt that it was because he himself wasn't powerful enough. If he had power like Grand Tutor Sun Jizong had right about now, Liang Wenhua would still have to make a few deliberations if he wanted to plot against Tang Fan. They wouldn't have to be as passive as they were now. Seeing his worry, Tang Fan tried to comfort him. "Don't be like that. I know you're just thinking of me, but whether I can remain as an official is not for you or me to decide. I have already done what I should have done to the best of my ability, and my conscience is clear. Don't be so worried about this anymore. Drink today, be drunk today, and worries will keep on coming tomorrow." Hearing this, Sui Zhou wasn't sure whether he ought to be gratified how Tang Fan seemed to not worry about this matter, or to be vexed about his lack of care. Still, if Tang Fan had been an official that looked for personal gains and only wanted to climb higher, the two of them probably would never have been so complimentary or become close friends. There are many things that have causes and consequences as well as losses and gains. Although not everything under the sky always went as one wanted, when they had gone down into the tomb and encountered the bloodthirsty tomb guardians, they had believed that they were going to be buried under there, only to end up returning safely. That itself was already a blessing delivered from the heavens. They really shouldn't be overly demanding. In any case, he had a lot of savings. If the time came, he would be able to keep supporting him, so just trying to get him to stay would be fine. Sui Zhou hadn't yet noticed that he had unwittingly been influenced by Tang Fan's free-spiritedness, his philosophy on life, formerly strict and methodical to the point that it had been unforgivingly precise, had slowly transformed. Were this the past, he might have thought that Tang Fan was the sort of person to not seek to better himself, then get angered by him for being a disappointment and be unwilling to associate with him. Nowadays, he could understand him, and approve of his friend's path of conduct. That stemmed from him knowing that Tang Fan did in fact seek to better himself, and put in a lot of hard work, too. He had already performed well enough within the scope of his capabilities. He just didn't want to be demanding and was adaptable to all scenarios. He always worked with the ambition of a peaceful government, but his personality was one of being aloof from others' worldliness, as if cleansed by a spring breeze. Being able to befriend such a person was not a blessing to Tang Fan himself, but a blessing for everyone else. Well said. The corner of Sui Zhou's mouth slightly raised, his mind relaxing. It was unclear when it had started, but whenever he looked at or thought of this man, the frostiness that he had in his eyes whenever he looked at anyone else was missing, replaced with simple, faint happiness. Despite being injured and forced to stay inside carriages for the return trip, this was truly an extremely rare period of leisure for him. Disregarding the Chenhua's typical illustriousness, what type of responsibility one had matched with what kind of position they were in. Were the Chenhua a cushy job that only hid themselves when something came up, it would have long since been swallowed whole by the eastern and western depots, and the way others would look at them would be no different than how they would look at trash, to say nothing of the fact that no one would be scared upon sighting them. The position Sui Zhou had today had been earned entirely by his own efforts. As could be imagined, with the two's posts and duties being what they were, they normally had excessively few days where they didn't need to think about anything, able to just lay lazily down in a carriage, bask in the sun and chat away every day. When the group made its way through Beijing Prefecture, it was nearly dusk. A post house was not too far ahead. Everyone was a bit tired, so Tang Fan ordered for them to rest here for now, then head straight for the capital first thing tomorrow. Chen Wen and Tian Xian went on ahead to present the group's identity correspondence and put things in order, which was nothing more than letting the post people know ahead of time to vacate space, prepare hot water and meals, feed fodder to the horses, and so on. However, not long after, the two returned with faces full of fury, saying that the post house people had claimed that all the rooms were full and none could be vacated. That was quite surprising. The identity correspondence they had been jointly issued by the Chenghua and Ministry of Justice, and even sealed and stamped by the cabinet to verify their status as imperial ambassadors so that they would be unhindered their entire journey. No matter who was staying in the post house, upon seeing this correspondence, they would need to make room immediately, regardless of how they felt about it. Following the group of big burly men that was the Chenghua gave such confidence in actions. Right before their eyes though, at this baiting post house not far from the capital, this had actually failed. Peng Xi was instantly furious, calling for two others to follow Chenghua and Tianxian back over, saying that he wanted to see which short-sighted bastard refused to yield for a convoy of imperial ambassadors. Tang Fan and Sui Zhou didn't take this matter seriously, continuing to stay in the carriage to read and chat. The former had a piece of 5-spiced rabbit that magistrate he had gifted him on departure. In his view, the benefit of going abroad was guiltlessly raking in his salary while sampling delicacies from all over the country. All of the previous dangers that they had encountered in the Gongtum got gulped down into his belly alongside this deliciously salty snack. This rabbit doesn't taste too different from the cooking methods of the capital, he still said, but there seems to be the hints of fennel and apple in it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find a specialized restaurant for cuisine like this after we get. Before he could say back, Peng Xi's thunderously furious voice was heard outside. What a joke. Those sons of bitches dare to try and bully our Chenghua. Tang Fan couldn't help but lift the carriage curtain. What's going on? Sir Tang, I've asked around and the ones staying in the post house are from the Eastern Depot. Peng Xi raged. Each one of them is occupying a room, insisting that they're full up and refusing to move. Tang Fan turned his head to exchange a look with Sui Zhou. Both of them were a bit surprised. The Eastern Depot and Chenghua had always found each other awful, but it had never gotten to the extent that they would completely turn hostile. A situation like this was really quite rare. Tang Fan was somewhat puzzled. Didn't Chief Eunuch Shang Ming want to befriend the Chenghua before? Why are his subordinates so bold as to be impertinent? Sui Zhou knew some of the inside information, here. What you said is something of the past. The commanding officer at the time was still Wan Tong, and as the little brother of Consort Wan, Shang Ming naturally wanted to flatter him all he could. Now that commanding officer Yuan took his place, Shang Ming doesn't set the Chenghua in his sights anymore. Outside the carriage, Peng Xi was still seething. Brother, what should we do? Don't tell me we're actually going to just take this. After Yuan Bin had taken charge, the Chenghua had started to be low-key. Sui Zhou wasn't one for ostentation, either. On the Western Depot's end, Wang Zhi had been managing things beyond the Great Wall for these 2 years, meaning that he too was neglecting the capital. This had given the Eastern Depot the chance to sit high. Their tyrannical behavior had not grown overnight. Despite Peng Xi's question, he wasn't someone that didn't know the gains and losses of this. He believed that with Sui Zhou's personality, it was nearly a certainty that they wouldn't be going head-to-head with the Eastern Depot but simply proceeding straight onwards to the capital. Yet, Sui Zhou's mild answer was, if they refuse to move, beat them until they do. Everyone was shocked by this aggressive phrase, after which they started uproaring. They all had been beaten up by the tomb guardians, and had lost several brothers. Anger had long been stuffed down inside them. Having received Sui Zhou's permission, they got excited. Those called out to by Peng Xi all rolled up their sleeves and followed after him in preparation to take back their place. Inside the post house, the minor official that oversaw it was speaking to someone beside him, pained. Officer Zhang, please empathize with this lowly one. Can you clear out a room for them? They are the Chenghua. Between the Chenghua and Eastern Depot, he could afford to offend neither. This was what was called, when gods fight, mortals suffer. The Jinyue had wanted rooms just now, but the Eastern Depot had yelled them away. Once the latter people patted their butts off and left, if the Jinyue then wanted to place the stet onto his head, wouldn't that be a wrong to him? Officer Zhang of the Eastern Depot laughed disdainfully. You're too much of a coward, Lao Wei. So what if it's the Jinyue? You still think things are how they were before? That old man, Yuan Ben, is used to being a tortoise with its head withdrawn, and doesn't dare to poke it out for anything. Every single Jinyue has turned into a little turtle, too. No rooms means no rooms. Why should we move out for them? All the depot wardens subordinating him guffawed in cheer. Who are you calling turtles? Several Jinyue came striding over like meteors. It was their leader that had coldly shouted that. Officer Zhang side-eyed him. Oh, it's Deputy Behu Pang. What's the matter? You noticed that little words don't work, so you came on your own personal campaign. Pang Qi smiled icily. The one talking about me turned out to be you, Xiao Zhang. It's been a long time since I've seen you, yet you're still so hopeless. Officer Zhang was enraged. Who are you calling little? That's what you are. Let me ask you, are you moving out of the post house rooms or what? The other stuck out his chin. Our people have filled them all. So what? Get here earlier next time. It should be said that, aside from a few eunuchs, the underlings used in the two depots of those chief eunuchs were most likely all transferees from the Jinyue. Since everyone here had come from the same place, they ought to have been closer, but ever since Yuan Ben had left retirement once more and quietly cleaned out Wantong's cronies, the connection between the Jinyue and Eastern Depot had also been severed. Moreover, when Jinyue went to the Eastern Depot, they would inevitably become depot wardens. With different superiors above them, everyone's benefits and standpoints would inevitably switch thereafter. These current circumstances coming about were not at all strange. Still, regardless of what trouble was cooked up, the Eastern Depot and Jinyue would at least maintain superficial harmony. Officer Jiang's present display was much too arrogant. Pang Qi didn't mince words with him. I'll ask you one last time. Will you yield? No. Pang Qi took 2 steps back, then waved his hand. Beat him until he does, brothers. As soon as those words were said, the Jinyue standing behind him pounced like tigers. Officer Zhang went pale from fright. What are you all doing? This is a revolt. Ow, ow. Watching this spectacle, the post-minder's face was nearly as white as the walls. He could only fret from the side. Don't fight. Don't fight. Officer Zhang and them had been accustomed to living the good life in the capital, where they scattered their prestige all over its grounds. How could they ever outfight the Jinyue who had just come back from the brink of death? They were smacked around into a mess straight away, crying out for their parents. This had changed from a scuffle to a beatdown, and in the end, they could only hold down their heads, kneel, and beg for mercy, saying that they wouldn't dare fight anymore. Within the chaos, Officer Zhang tried to take the chance to slip away, but Pang Qi, who had been waiting nearby all this time, flew a kick out, sending him straight to the ground. Looking on as the other was coming up for another kick, Officer Zhang quickly shouted, Pang Behu. Brother Pang. Don't. I'll stop. Let's just talk. We're all brothers here, don't be like this. Pang Qi grinned evilly. Now you're acknowledging us as brothers, huh? Why didn't you say as much before, instead saying that our commanding officer is an old tortoise? Huh? Officer Zhang slapped himself on the mouth. This little brother has a rotten mouth? A rotten mouth? I'm the only one that's a tortoise. You're a generous gentleman, Brother Pang. Don't lower yourself to my level. Pang Qi kicked him again. Admitting defeat early isn't going to make this right? Do you think that the Eastern Depot is that big of a ship you're riding on, that your backing is strong enough for you even place no care upon your former brothers? The other had a face full of sorrow. How would I dare? I won't keep things from you, Brother Pang. We actually had an order from above that told us that there was no need to give the Jinyue any face outside. This wasn't by my will. Since he wanted to scout for some more information out of him, Pang Qi picked him up. Commanding Officer Yuan is a veteran of 2 courts. Your chief eunuch disrespecting him means he's gotten an even heavier thigh to cling to, right? Officer Zhang smiled bitterly. You know the rules, Brother Pang. How could I speak of the chief eunuch at random? Pang Qi gave an understanding "oh," then turned to call to his subordinates. He needs a spanking. Come over and keep beating him up. No, no, no. Officer Zhang quickly grabbed his hand. You haven't been in the capital recently, brother. The news must not have circulated fast enough. As it is, His Majesty newly sealed a State Master of Clairvoyance into the truth, the protection of holiness, and far-reaching benevolence. A State Master of, what? A State Master of Clairvoyance into the truth, the protection of holiness, and far-reaching benevolence. That name is way too long. What then? This State Master has remarkable powers and strong magic. His Majesty is fully convinced in him and respects him as a master. He's planning on building a Yongchang temple at the Western City District. Pang Qi kicked him yet again. You're spouting nonsense. What does any of that have to do with your chief eunuch? Officer Jiang's expression crumbled. Ow, brother. You're too impatient. That master was referred by our chief eunuch. His Majesty respects the master, and has a greater appreciation towards eunuch Shang. He told us that he suggested to His Majesty to allow Wantong to come back and head the Jinyue again, and he's already agreed. I'm telling you the truth, okay. Commanding Officer Yuan won't be sitting in his seat for long. Pang Qi was greatly alarmed, grabbing him. Are you serious? I wouldn't lie to you. Why else would eunuch Shang tell us not to give you all any face? He knows that all of you were promoted by Commanding Officer Yuan, so if Commanding Officer Wan returns, he'll definitely put you all back in your original places. That's why he wants to flatter him up ahead of time. Pang Qi was no longer in the mood to sort him out. He tossed Officer Zhang to the side, told the postminder to vacate several rooms, then rushed back to report to Suizhou. Seeing as how Officer Zhang had suffered defeat, the postminder had no room for disagreement, so he had agreed over and over again before going to ready things up. After he heard the full story, there was no sort of shocked reaction on Suizhou's face. He told them all to go divide up the rooms in as placid a tone as ever. As his superior was so calm, Pang Qi also felt relief and went off to obey his orders. In spite of the Eastern Depot getting out of half of the rooms, it still wasn't enough. Just like before, Tang Fan shared a room with Suizhou. Upon getting into the room, only then did Suizhou show a vexed expression. Tang Fan picked up the face cloth out of the hot water, wrung it out, then passed it to him. Looks like you're going to have a hard time after we get back to the capital. Suizhou gave a rare sigh. Yuan Ben is 100 times better than Wantong, but he unfortunately doesn't have as strong a backing as him. Each day Consort Wan still lives, Wantong's status won't drop from high up. His Majesty only wanted to teach him a little lesson before, which was why Yuan Ben was switched in, so now that he thinks that he's had enough of that lesson, he wants to let Wantong back in. When it came down to it, Wantong and Yuan Ben were both the Emperor's pawns. Whatever he wanted them to do, they would have to do. It wasn't just them, but everyone else was like that, too. The great ancestor had established the 6 branches of imperial censors with the original purpose of supervising officials and admonishing the emperor. Later on, the cabinet similarly came to be, where one cabinet minister's word would have the emperor thinking twice about his actions. What a shame it was that the cabinet members of the present court had truly limited courage. Even Lu Su, who held the status of the emperor's teacher, only dared to nag him over inconsequential matters. Under circumstances like these, No matter how loud the branch censor's admonishing voices were, they would have limited effect. Tang Fan just looked at the issue from another angle. Huang Chuan, after we return, it would be best for you to visit Commanding Officer Yuan. He's been in the Chenghua for years. Even though he's indifferent to fame and profit, he's definitely not someone that will allow himself to be pushed around. He asked you to take charge of the Northern Administrative Court Division, so he obviously appreciates your talents, and plans to foster you as his successor. If you can receive his complete endorsement and take over his power, then even if Wantong does come back, he won't dare to act rashly against you, as you'll then have firm control of the Northern Office and won't need to worry about him anymore. Also, he sat on the bed, stooped over to remove his shoes and socks, then laid down while wrapped in the blanket to further give him ideas. Your Empress Dowager Zhou's grandnephew and His Majesty's trust in you is no lesser than his trust in Wantong. Once we're back, you only need to remember these two things and then you won't drop in importance before the Emperor. Regardless of what schemes Wantong will try to use, they won't work on you, either. Suizhou raised a brow. I'd like to hear the details on that. First, never object to anything His Majesty does. If he asks for your opinions, don't give him your standpoint. Whatever he says, do it unless it goes contrary to your principles. Secondly, after Wantong tries to overthrow Yuan Bin, you need to plead on the latter's behalf. If His Majesty asks for the reason, just say it's sincerely because things concerning Yuan Wenzi also concern the late Emperor's heart. His Majesty will not only not reproach you but will pardon Yuan Bin and would felt even closer to you. The Chenghua Emperor had a lot of personal defects but was still a quite soft-hearted person, someone who cherished old friends. Further still, though, he was an emperor and disliked others opposing him all the time. Such varied personality traits reflecting off of him forged a very contradictory person. Even though Tang Fan had only met the emperor a scant few times before, from the descriptions given by Suizhou and Wang Ji, who had frequent contact with him, it wasn't difficult to deduce the man's personality. But, because these remarks were guilty of predicting the emperor's thoughts, which was a taboo, had Suizhou not been as close to him as he was, Tang Fan would have never said them out loud. Suizhou understood as much, warm thawing his heart and making him quite happy. I understand. Thank you. Tang Fan smiled. Why the need to give thanks between us? That night, Tang Fan dozed quite peacefully, his mood completely unaffected by all that's happening. Suizhou, however, remained awake. In order to prevent himself from pressing on Suizhou's injuries whenever he turned over, Tang Fan had taken it upon himself to sleep on the inside. At this moment, he was on his side with his back practically half leaned against the wall. Suizhou felt second-hand discomfort just looking at him, and yet he was still deep in dreams. Suizhou's gaze lingered. He watched him silently for a long time, then reached out to trace his handsome face. His finger ultimately landed on the other's lips, but he merely rubbed them gently for a short moment, not with any sort of lust or vulgarity, just with loving devotion. Before he met Tang Fan, he had actually been very lonely deep inside. The Sui family had never understood why he would actively join the Northern Administrative Court Division. In their opinion, he ought to work hard for the imperial exams like his brother did, so that the Sui family could break into a road that would honor their ancestors and shed them from their reputation as dependents upon their status as consort kin. The Chenghua had great power, but its name had never been nice to hear. Filling an empty rank was fine, but would getting called a court lackey behind the back be any sort of good? He didn't need anyone else's understanding, though. He was a lone wolf, always walking the path he had faith in. And yet, he had met Tang Fan, someone that sincerely strategized and made plans for him. With as good a friend as this, what more could a man ask for? Only that they could repay each other for a lifetime. The moon's splendor spilled in from outside the window's paper, landing upon Tang Fan's face. It added something of a halo to his charms, the contrast making him look like an immortal, not a man of the mundane world. All of a sudden, High Immortal Tang's lips moved like he was saying something. Suizhou, getting a rare urge out of curiosity, came in closer, only to hear him muttering, "Crab roe, tofu soup." Oh! That lofty image of Master Tang that had barely formed shattered in an instant. It could be said that the Eastern Depot people had been beaten black and blue into obedience. Officer Zhang never dared to provoke them again. Up until Tang Fan's group's departure, all of them had shrunk into their own rooms and never come out. The others, of course, would never bother with fighting these advantage-taking nobodies. Right out of Officer Jiang's mouth, they had learned that way too much had happened in the month they had left the capital. As Suizhou and Tang Fan had predicted, Zhang Ying actually had been driven to Nanjing by Wanan, and the Ministry of Justice had become Liang Wenhua's domain. With Consort Wan's pillow talk, the emperor intended to ask Wan Tong to take Yuan Bin's place and regain control over the Jinyue. The emperor favored the treacherous official Li Zhizheng, and had also appointed with imperial seal the monk Ji Xiao as a state master. Preparations to build the Yongchang temple had earned opposition from every level of society because it would force tens of thousands of citizens to relocate. The temple wouldn't be getting built, but the emperor was putting more and more trust into Ji Xiao, so he still planned to build an astral observatory for him. It was also said that since the crowned prince wasn't too close to Consort Wan, she kept brooding and had frequently put forth suggestions at the emperor's side. Over time, the emperor came to not like the crowned prince much and was thinking of establishing another one. That last tidbit was pure rumor, but it had to have some sort of credibility for Officer Zhang to have said it. Pretty much none of this news was good news. As was fathomable, what awaited them in the capital could only be an even more complicated and severe scene. When they had left the capital, it had been the beginning of spring, but now, no more than a month later, early summer had already crept in. Still, this time of the year was the best in the capital, being not too hot and not too cold, just enough to wear thin springtime garments during the day, and at most a thick cloak during the night. Regardless of how perilous the situation ahead was, such nice weather would never make anyone feel bad. When the carriages rode into the capital and they saw the wisterias full of life, the group's spirit was roused. Tang Fan needed to return to the Ministry of Justice to report on his work, before anything else, while Suizhou had to go to the Northern Administrative Court Division. The two made an appointment for further discussion once they were home, then went off to do what they ought to do. Prior to entering the city, Tang Fan had freshened up in the post house. He was still in his casual attire right now, but he didn't have the exhaustion of travel about him. He wanted to go and just get this over with, anyways, rather than wait around for Assistant Minister Liang to find fault in him, so he might as well send himself to the door of his own accord. Upon arriving at the ministry, he heard that Liang Wenhua was not present, so he went to the workroom of the Assistant Minister of the Right, Pen Yushun. The instant the man saw him, he got up to greet him with an exclamation of shock, his face full of surprise, both pleasant and not. "Runking? When did you get back?" Tang Fan smiled. "Just now. I came to visit Master Liang as soon as I could." Pen Yushun pursed his lips at the workroom neighboring his. "You didn't go there?" "I did, but the clerk said that he wasn't around." The other gave a grunt. "He's probably in the palace. He runs off to the cabinet quite diligently these days." The cabinet and 6 ministries were both central bureaus of the Great Ming, and also the only 2 located within the palace. Tang Fan smiled. Now that Minister Zhang has left, Assistant Liang heads the ministry. Him having to communicate with the cabinet frequently is only natural. Pen Yushun was astonished. "You already know?" Tang Fan nodded. "I heard on the way here." Pen Yushun sighed. "Runking, I read the documents you all sent back. I know you handled this assignment well, but the thing with Yin Wenhua is quite intractable. Liang Wenhua certainly has a knot in his heart about it, and he might lash out at you a few times. Just bear with it. You mustn't be affected by emotions and get into a direct fight with him. Although this fine sir feared everything, he wasn't a bad person. Tang Fan was thankful for his kindness, but the man was likely destined to be disappointed. The conflict between him and Liang Wenhua would not be resolved by making one-sided concessions. Still, he didn't refute him and only smiled as he consoled him. Rest easy, sir. This official knows the weight of things. While they spoke, a clerk came in from outside. Master Tang, Assistant Liang wants you to see him. Tang Fan got up to say his goodbyes to Peng Yushun, then followed the clerk into Liang Wenhua's office. The man's attitude appeared to be very different from how it had been a month ago. That wasn't strange. Power was the highest aphrodisiac for men. Wielding great authority and being subservient to another were two entirely different sensations, making Liang Wenhua's high spirits comprehensible. However, when he gave even Tang Fan a very friendly smile, that was highly abnormal. End chapter.